Good morning, Derrick Chevalier here. Welcome to CCN Sunrise. My guest this morning, Bobby Chacon, retired FBI agent who served 27 years, worked in New York, Los Angeles, and around the globe. He's also been a frequent guest on CCN and Fox and a number of the news stations, so we're pleased and privileged to have him here this morning. So thank you.
Thank you.
But Bobby, talk a little bit about the firing of Andrew McCabe. So what's that?
So the firing of Andrew McCabe to most FBI agents was kind of simple. The first thing they hammer into us at the FBI Academy is honesty is paramount, right? So if you make a mistake or if you do something wrong, you have to be honest about it. And in FBI parlance, it's called lack of candor. It's called lying. And so day one, we're taught that if you lie about something in an official investigation, you're going to be fired. And every agent knows that going forward. I know agents that have done it. I've known agents that have been fired for it. I don't know any agent that was officially found guilty of lack of candor and didn't get fired for it. So when we started hearing things around the end of last year and early this year that was the allegation against McCabe, you know, I kind of knew if in fact the IG's report came out and said, yes, we did find he exhibited a lack of candor, there was no question in most FBI agents' mind he had to be fired.
Yeah, and so in your view, I'm thinking that should have probably happened earlier than it did.
Sure. I mean, it's unfortunate that the timing was 2 days before he was officially eligible for his pension. He will still get his pension. The rules don't take that away from you. It will take longer for him to collect it, and it would take an extraordinary measure of the government to go after that pension, and they've never indicated that they would. So a lot of that talk about him, right. I think losing his pension was more of an effort to make him out to be more of a victim. Right. And he is going to be fine financially.
Right. And that's a good point, because the idea that the media focus so much on that, and there are other areas where we focus on the sensationalism.
Sure.
It's bad he got fired, but it's also bad that he lied, because it impacts the entire integrity
Sure.
of the FBI.
Absolutely.
Right. So let's now talk about the morale from your perspective of the FBI, given all of the stories that have come out repeatedly. What's your take?
Well, you know, as of a couple of weeks ago, we all knew things were getting better, because all the talk from last summer and last fall, even sometimes this winter, had started to die down. World events took center stage. Syria, North Korea, things like that started to draw attention away from the FBI being put into the spotlight every day. Unfortunately, what happened last week, we all know, James Comey released his book, and that dragged the FBI front and center again. The FBI is an agency that works best when we're not inside a political maelstrom, when we're not being tugged in each direction of the political spectrum, when we're left alone to do our job. And that was one thing when Robert Mueller was appointed as special counsel, and I was asked, you know, what do you hope to hear about out of Mueller's camp? I said, I hope we hear nothing. I hope it's silence until they come out with a plea agreement on somebody, or if they arrest somebody, or do a search warrant. But I hope we don't hear leaks or press conferences. The FBI generally doesn't work well that way. And so now that Comey's book is out, and now all of I can tell you, friends of mine that still work for the FBI, last weekend, at every barbecue they were at every bowling league that they were at, if they were at their kids' Little League game, all their friends, their families, their social acquaintances were asking them, what do you think about Comey's book, right? And that's not something the agents truly want to talk about. It's you know, it's just something that's better left. The day-to-day operations of the FBI are better left not in the public spotlight.
Right. And it's probably makes sense that Comey would take advantage of this opportunity. And I'm suspecting that there's a spectrum of ideas about whether or not he should and what he did both while he was there and after. But again, you point out that there's an impact on the FBI that the FBI does not want, because it just brings to mind that you can't operate in the way that it makes most effective.
Sure. I mean, and even beyond that, you know, Comey himself could potentially be a witness in further Robert Mueller trials that may come as a result of obstruction of justice or something like that. The last thing I was an attorney before I went to the FBI, the last thing you want your witness to do is be out there spreading all kinds of potentially impeachable material if he's a witness later on. An enterprising and an aggressive defense attorney, if they get a Jim Comey on this witness stand, are going to have his book, his last summer's testimony before Congress, and now all these interviews. And if he made one even minor inconsistent statement, you can bet that a defense attorney on cross-examination is going to bring that out and hammer Jim Comey on his honesty. And that's all it takes sometimes with a jury. You need to just convince one person that that witness is lying. And so I'm sure Robert Mueller probably would have preferred that Jim Comey stay out of the spotlight till after he was a witness, a potential witness in any of these cases.
Right, because one of the things you have seen that Mueller has done has been pretty silent and really allowed everybody else to have a discussion. We don't know what he is actually thinking, do we? I think, yes.
No, that's absolutely right. And because it's not that we want to maintain our secrecy because we're doing something improper. It's that when I'm talking to several witnesses in a case and I'm trying to get one witness to cooperate against another witness, it's best if those witnesses aren't out in public telling everybody what they're doing. You know, I can play witnesses against each other. I can get to the big talk now is Cohen flipping on Trump and things like that. Well, you don't get people to flip unless you can say, we're not going to tell anybody until the last moment.
Sure.
And so it just gives you a lot more maneuverability in your investigation when things aren't so public.
Right. So let's now talk about the Waffle House shooting. What is your take on that? There's just been some breaking news on that. What are your thoughts here?
Well, again, we have a situation where a young person who clearly had some issues, and I'm not a mental health professional, but clearly had possible mental health issues. He had an incident at the White House where he was arrested. He's claimed that Taylor Swift, I think, was stalking him. So clearly this young man has some problems. And I believe he had his guns, who he, I guess, legally obtained to begin with, had them taken away, given them to his father. Somehow, obviously, either his father gave them back to him or he got them from his father. So another situation where a young man is giving off hints and indications that an incident like this could happen. The problem is we don't have laws now currently on the books that say if someone is hinting at doing something like this, we're going to be able to take their liberty away and throw them in jail or something like that, right? So this is where law enforcement and mental health need to kind of combine forces and say, what are we going to do to address these young people, mainly young men, that are hinting that something like this could be in the works, yet they've committed no crime. And so where are we going to draw the line to say, we're going to take this person off the street for a mental health evaluation? Now, most states have that. It's sometimes 48 hours, 72 hours. 72. It's very limited in scope. Maybe the discussion should be, can we expand the scope of those temporary mental health holds to get these people the kind of examination they need, and then let doctors decide whether or not this person's a true threat or not a true threat. Because law enforcement shouldn't make that decision. Because when you throw somebody in jail, you know, they had to have committed a crime. It's constitutional. That's what our whole system of laws is based on. You commit a crime, you have a trial by jury, then they convict you and you go to jail.
You know, it's interesting. There was a movie, I think Tom Cruise was in it, about people being convicted and taken off the street.
Pre-crime.
Pre-crime. So we're not there yet. But you did mention, I think at one point, there have been some evolutions in terms of what officers are supposed to do. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, in an active shooter situation like Parkland, before Columbine, which is, 19 or 20 years ago now, the old protocols were to seal off the area, wait for a SWAT team to go in, tactical, that have the means to address an active shooter threat. We've found that, you know, children in schools were getting killed or movie theaters were getting killed. And so they've come up with the new paradigm of active shooter protocols. And that is the first officer on scene, either by himself or with anybody else that arrives, goes right at the shooter, directly at the shooter, because statistically we know that the sooner that the shooter is engaged by anyone, by a citizen, by a police officer, by anything, they either do one of two things: they shoot themselves, or they commit what we call suicide by cop, by raising the gun at the police, knowing the police are going to then shoot them. So in any event, the sooner that person is interdicted in some way, the incident ends quicker.
Right, and I would imagine that also causes less trauma for the people around because it's going on less time. Not that it isn't trauma, but the less time that happens, the less there is. Fascinating. I really want to talk with you again. Please come back.
Absolutely.
It's a great privilege.
Sure.
We've had Bobby Chacon, incredible guest, former FBI agent. Join us next time on CCN Sunrise. This is Derrick Chevalier.